everybody, it's Marla Martinson and Karen A. Dahlman coming at you again. Hello,
Yay!
Karen.
Hi, Marla. Hi, everybody.
How have you been, Karen?
Been doing really well. I'm been a little sad. I've been a little sad because of the passing of Dr. Wayne Dyer, a friend of ours and mentor to us. And yeah, okay, but we're working through that. It's been a sad time, to be honest.
It has. Sunday I was in Malibu at a friend's house and we were having lunch and it was like such a great day and I was relaxing and I opened up my phone and I saw that Wayne Dyer died and I was in tears. It hit me like
Yeah.
a truck. It just I mean, for 20 years, I had been reading his books, going to his lectures. I'd met him 3 times in person. Listen to his podcast, listen to his radio. It was like, and I just read his memoir. It was always, if Wayne Dyer was in the world, everything was going to be okay. And I just couldn't believe it. Just couldn't
I
believe
feel
it.
I feel the same. I had an opportunity to meet him in January of 1998. I was going through a real tough time in my life, and walked up to him at a conference, and we shook hands, and he looked at me in the eyes, and I just said, "I want to tell you how much of a mentor and leader you have been for me." And so exemplary of everything you write about. And I said, "Thank you." And he looked me in the eyes and said, "No, thank you." It was just so sweet. And that he was so dear to people, so philanthropic, so loving that, his light will burn on forever. But you miss that. And
Hmm.
so I know today Marla and I are really trying to show you and for ourselves how to have a memorial service for someone that you may not know this person that well. It may not be your best friend or your mother, your father, your pet, but it's still somebody who has influenced you and affected your life. And so we're going to walk through that today and just show you by example how we're going to do this.
Exactly. Well, we wanted to kind of. I just want if you guys. I mean, there's some people, believe it or not, there are people out there who have not heard of Wayne Dyer,
Sure.
which
Sure. Part of, but yeah, yeah,
yeah,
you would not.
and so
That's
if you don't know who he is, I mean he is, I would say, one of the most influential spiritual leaders of the 20th
true.
and 21st century of our time. He's, I think, the
Absolutely.
top 10 voted. I mean, if on that list, one of the top 10 most influential leaders of our time. And Wayne Dyer was a proponent of living a self-actualized life. Maslow was one of his mentors, the psychologist Abraham Maslow. And Maslow described the small percentage of people he called self-actualizing as living the extraordinary level of consciousness. One of the highest qualities these self-actualizers possesses is the inclination to be independent of the good opinion of other people. And that's what Wayne Dyer used to say all the time, be independent of the good opinion of others. And when you trust yourself to decide your destiny, you don't allow externals to discourage or influence you. You have faith, and faith is attained through complete trust and confidence in the power of the one universal mind, which you are inextricably part of. And that was really the cornerstone of his teachings, I think, and he taught a lot of things, like we were talking about.
Yeah.
He would pick a spiritual influencer, whether it was Lao Tzu of the Tao or the Buddha, and live it and then write about it and teach it.
He said often when he would write his books, he would just tap into these great minds, this universal consciousness of this wisdom, and he would just write prolifically, and he would meditate for hours and then write prolifically every day, whatever subject he took, because he just opened himself up to truth. And as Marla just said, it didn't matter if it was Lao Tzu, the Buddha, Jesus, a great poet. It didn't matter. He
St.
just
Francis de
tapped into
Assisi
that.
was a big one. St.
That was a
Francis was a
big
big one.
one of his. So one of the things I like to do, Marla, when I honor somebody or a passing, is I like to light a candle. So what I have here is my Buddha with a lit candle. I'm just going to have it sitting here. You have yours, great.
Yeah.
And this is just for me a part of the process of really honoring somebody. So you light a candle, and I think we're going to share a few more of his quotes and a little bit more about our relationship and what he meant to us. And this is kind of one way to go into an honoring of somebody that you don't want to forget. You can't forget Wayne. He will always be the brightest star out there for many people forever.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I love talking about the spiritual icons that he followed. When asked about his religious beliefs, he pointed out, "My belief is that the truth is a truth until you organize it, and then it becomes a lie. I don't think that Jesus was teaching Christianity. Jesus was teaching kindness, love, concern, and peace. What I tell people is don't be Christian, be Christ-like. Don't be Buddhist, be Buddhist-like. And I have to wonder what Wayne would think about this woman. I can't think of her name right now, that they just put in jail for not issuing the marriage licenses to gay people. You know, if she said God is the authority while she won't do it, and I have to think that Wayne Dyer would say Jesus was teaching kindness, love, and concern, not exclusion and anger. So it's very split. I mean, some people think, well, she should be able to practice her religion, she shouldn't be in jail, and then other people are like, well, how can she do this? So very polarizing there.
Yeah, I think he would look past that, as you said, and he would see the unification of all and say that is what we all deserve. And in fact, it's a constitutional right of anybody at this point to marry. So
right. She has
that's just wrong to stand in the way of that. But he was very loving and on all different philosophies, theosophies, religions. There was not one that he just subscribed to. It was like he was a man of the world, of many worlds, and of all the worlds, obviously now. Marla, my favorite quote of his, and I believe it's the cornerstone to me of his writings, is he would say, change the way you look at things, and the things you look at will change.
Love it.
Quite simply put. Yes. Yeah, I love that one too.
Exactly. If you're going through anything and you're just looking at it with doom and gloom, and it'll keep perpetuating. But if you switch the way you look at it, what you can learn from it, things will change. I love that too. Yeah. And then there's, I like what he said, doing what you love is the cornerstone of having abundance in your life, which we did a video on doing what you love, which was fantastic. And we both have our own businesses, and we moved out of working for someone else and kind of pulling our own strings. And I think that was a title of one of his books, the second book, Pulling Your Own Strings. And that's what...
Pulling Your Own Strings, that's right. His first book was Erroneous Zones, and that came out in the 70s. And he took it and went around the country and literally had that book published and just went to bookstore, the radio store, and totally sold that book out of the trunk of his car. Pretty amazing back then, because he was like one of the original, if you want to say gurus, I really say spiritual leaders, and a very adept sage himself, but he just went for it back in the 70s when it was unheard of to do something of this nature. The internet wasn't there, and you didn't have that kind of mass media or social media. You really had to really work hard, and that's what he did. And everything that came to him, he did put the work into it, but yet he always saw himself as successful, abundant and surrounded by loving people. He was talking about that, Marla, on one of his last radio shows. I know you listened to him too. That came out just a couple of weeks ago about that concept. About abundance, and he's always in wealth. He always felt like that was his thing. There was no question about it, and he taught that to us.
And he always attracted abundance. And he was offered tenure. He was a professor at a university, and he thought, "Gosh, well, people dream of having that. This is a secure job the rest of my life with good pay." And he said, I just don't see myself stuck in that the rest of my life. And so he quit. He didn't accept it, and he hit the road with his book and started speaking. Right. And he said that he wrote Erroneous Zones after he forgave his father at his father's grave, because his father had been a drunk and alcoholic and left the family, and he was angry with him his whole life, never met him, and went to his grave and was going to spit on the grave or pee on it or something. And then he decided forgiveness. And once he forgave him, everything flowed. He wrote that book, I think, in a few days or something.
Yeah, that's another cornerstone of his life, was forgiveness. And he practiced what he preached. He walked that talk. He was a king of forgiveness, and wrote many of his books touched on it. Marla, my favorite book of his, it came out in '89, was You'll See It When You Believe It. Mm-hmm. That book I loved so much. And my second favorite was Real Magic.
Real Magic, excellent.
When I wrote this book, which is my first book, The Spirit of Creativity, I referenced 3 of his books in here. He was so important to me. I wrote this book back in 96, 97, not to be published till but a lot later. But he was such a mentor towards me. That's what I wanted to tell him when I met him, that he was my mentor, and he just thanked me instead. I'm thinking you. But that's a kind of kind, gentle soul and heart, this this man was and still is, right? He
Yes,
still is.
absolutely, and he is still there for us. It's just not in the physical. And what how fitting that he just passed away in his sleep. I mean, he
Yeah.
didn't have to have a long, drawn out illness or anything, and it's just like, wow, he lived all of those principles, and he was rewarded in the fact that he just got to kind of ascend. I guess probably had a heart attack in his sleep. His family affirmed that it was a heart issue. But gosh, and you see some of these amazing spiritual leaders who they get to just ascend that way. I mean, that's my wish for myself.
Lie
let me
down
go in
and
my
they
sleep.
transition, don't they? It's really, yeah, quite beautiful. And still, nonetheless, it's sad. And so Marla and I are just honoring the memory, and we've been talking about it outside of this session we're doing right now, because we felt that. We felt the pain, and we're just honoring how we feel. We're honoring our heart, and we're honoring Wayne at the same time. And I think the more we can honor this process, which is a natural process to life, it is death, that's inevitable, the easier it can become for us in terms of smoother transitions. It's always painful, but we begin to understand that it can be a process that can be healthily dealt with and healthily understood. And that's what we're doing today. And if you too, whatever however you think of Wayne, if you want to leave that below too, your comments as part of memorial to this what we're doing today, we'd love to have that as well as part of this, because it's a ripple effect. It goes out into the world, and he talked about that. This energy you have, the way you are, it doesn't just affect your little world. It actually ripples out because it touches other people.
Absolutely. And I was also devastated when one of his friends and also a guru, Stuart Wilde, passed away
yes.
two years ago in May, and I loved him, and he's gone.
Me
and
too.
So many of the great teachers that we love are getting older now. Deepak Chopra is not a spring chicken anymore. You're like, don't. Not that he's going anywhere anytime soon, but you just
and those two were like brothers.
Yes, those two.
Brothers.
He was friends with Deepak and Stuart, and
yes.
A lot of these guys, and it's like, just don't go anywhere, And I thought Wayne Dyer would be around with us for at least 10 more years.
It was shocking, to say the least. It was very shocking.
Yeah.
But he also knew, too, that it was an easy transition for him. He talks about it a lot and writes about it. He knew where he was going. He didn't need the pockets in his suits. He knew that he would need no pocket, need nothing to carry. And that's one of his quotes, basically, that he knew he could just transition easily and it wasn't going to be hard. And he really believed heaven was in our mind. Heaven is what we hold within ourselves. And so he understood that, which is very admirable. So if we can learn anything from him, it's just the ease at transitioning through life. He had his ups and downs. He definitely had his share of hard times. Definitely, he was in an orphanage from a very young age, and his mom finally was able to bring him back into the home. And his father, left him at the age of 3, as Marla said. And he had some failed relationships, and yet he learned from them, and he shared. He was very open in sharing his life.
Yeah, a lot of people would say, "Oh, well, how can he be a guru or teacher? He had 3 marriages, and he had this illness." It's not. We're human. It's not about not ever having anything happen or being perfect. I think the teachers that can best teach us are people who have gone through it themselves as well, and they're learning on the same path. So I think because I have seen comments and things, oh, well, and I've heard people tell me, yeah, but he's not perfect. Well, he never claimed to be perfect, and I don't think any of our teachers that we look up to do.
No, it wasn't perfect. He was just authentic. And that's something for all of us to ascribe to. He was very authentic with what was going on, and always telling us when he had the lymphoma cancer, when he had a heart attack, or when he went through his divorces and his children and everything that happened. He was always very authentic and real about it. I think that's what's important to me. And to me, that's a great leader who is real. They're touchable. They're salt of the earth, yet they know how to share this wisdom with all. That's
leukemia. It was leukemia that he had, and
leukemia. Thank you.
And he was cured by John of God, which
that's
was amazing. And one of his daughters went on Facebook and confirmed. She said there was no, when they did the autopsy, there was no leukemia in his blood. It was cured. It was a heart issue. So he did, and he believed fully that he was cured, and he was. So you'll see it when you believe it. Is what he likes to say. Yeah.
Well, Dr. Dyer, you are loved by many. You always will be, and you will always be one of my mentors. Thank you for your light in the world.
And thanks, everybody. Leave your comments below and let us know your feelings, too.
Thank you.
Peace.